And let me admit this person. And let me pull up the agenda. Come on, open up. Okay. Okay, Jim.
Okay, so we kind of, if you just try to get it all on one page there, yeah, there we go. There's actually probably a little bit too much on this agenda, so we don't need to get through it all. I think what I'd like to do is to, first of all, open up the meeting and thank everybody for being here. And Meg, if you would call the roll, I'm sorry. Didn't think of that.
Okay. Am I still, no, I am unmuted. Good. Mr. Castagnoli,
Here.
Mr. Cater,
Here.
Mr. Mortimer,
Here.
and Mr. Quish.
I am here as well.
Thank you.
So there's a lot here, and I don't think that it's all that germane to what we want to do. What I'd like to do is have David just give us a quick review of the updated graphics, because it's kind of cool to look at. And I think I would like us all to share insights on David, share again, if you would.
Yep. Oops, sorry about that.
The
Oops. Let me hit button.
to talk about how once we get a draft, how to share it, right? I think it's important to have, and I'm sure we've all talked about this and feel the same way. It's important to have the public have early access to a draft and be able to public comment. And as we go forward, we'll, as a committee, decide where to have and when to have some public input and on what, specific subjects. Some subjects, maybe like resilience, using it as an example, it's not in stone, but maybe, technical to the point of we've got it covered and the public may not want to comment. But so we'll develop those decisions as we go forward. But after a review of the updated graphics and the GIS layers, which I think is nice for us to see that we have made a lot of progress quickly, just not a whole lot of time unless you have interest or questions. But then to talk about how we want to, and what our ideas are on getting public engagement and public access to what we have when we get a draft, which should be within a month or so. We should have a draft. Obviously, we are going to be still weighing in as a committee and with public input on a bunch of stuff. I think that the housing piece is something that once we get through with the public engagement piece, the housing is something that both connects with the POCD and current issues and regulations subcommittee. So I think it warrants our attention. Open space and recreation. We spent a lot of time with the previous iteration of this committee, as well as historic preservation, and we have minutes and data, and we've moved that forward. Doesn't mean that those issues are closed, but I don't think if we don't get to those tonight, I don't think we're missing the opportunity to do some substantive work. So with that, I would say, David, if you would go through number 5 and show us the updated graphics and speak a little to what we have gotten done.
Yep. Okay, I'm just pulling up that screen, which I will now share. Okay, so no particular order, just order that they've been filed. We have an updated coastal access map, which shows basically all of the predominant public access ways from the city to coastal resources to the various beaches. which is newer, clearer, better than what we had. I don't know if anyone has any questions. It's pretty self-explanatory.
I don't have a question. I just want to throw this out there. This isn't really the forum for it, but I've had an issue with these coastal access areas. I've taken it to the mayor and to Steve Johnson, I think, with the open spaces, and owners are blocking off these access points.
Yep.
And it's really, I've had issues personally, and neighbors have, where we've been told to not actually use them. And the police have been threatened to call in. So it's been, it's a pet peeve of mine. And I just want to make note that maybe, I know this isn't really the forum for it, but since I see him up there, I really had a comment on it.
So John, I'm sorry, I missed the beginning of that. You've had issues where these public access beaches have been blocked?
Yeah, homeowners, a lot of these near Silver Beach they're in between houses. You know, they're just like paths in between houses, and owners put up gates and block the access points off with garbage cans.
Let's look at that. Let's look at where that is, David. If you could get us to the far right.
Yeah, it's really an issue. Silver Beach.
Yeah, there's Blair Street. There's Blair. There's Surf. There's Carolyn. Scroll down, David, please.
Yep. 1 second. Hold on. I want to make sure I hit the right button. There we go.
Yeah. So we have Surf, Carolyn, Maddox, Blair, Chetwood, Cooper, Pearl,
Yeah.
and then Silver Sands.
Specifically, Chetwood, and I think, is it Blair? I forget exactly.
Yeah.
I shouldn't name them because I don't remember exactly.
No, but okay. But so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 plus Silver Sands. So there's 7 that should be available for all the neighbors.
Yeah.
And you're saying that it's not. So this is actually probably a good thing as we go forward and talk about the public engagement, that we point out to the public, and we'll talk about this, how to do this, but to point them to this and say, this is what it is. This is the public access. And if there is an issue, then there is obviously, the police or the mayor's office, and we may actually collectively come up with a quick sentence that directs people to the right place to go. But good point.
I thought with the POCD, the idea behind it was, this is what we want. This is a vision for our city, and what we have envisioned is these are access points for the public.
And they're in stone. They're in stone. There's no argument. So good point. And let's carry that on when we talk about public access or public information sharing with the POCD to make sure that this piece is communicated effectively.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. So I just want to make a note of that, and not spend too much time on it, but I think it's very important that we do make a note of that.
I agree. It is good point.
All right, thank you.
And I've heard that same issue for my entire tenure with the city. It comes up every year. And Public Works is charged with making sure that that's kept open, because they're in charge of the public spaces, and those are public access ways. So that's anytime you encounter that issue, you should follow up with the Public Works director.
And it's like some people might get pushed away at Blair Street, for example, and they say, oh, geez, I guess I was wrong. I guess we don't have access. But if we point them to this document and this graphic, they'll know that they do have legitimate right to that access. So that'll be part of our communication piece, is to make sure that this is highlighted somehow.
Yeah, and that those homeowners realize too that this is the way it is.
Yeah, it's not their dirt.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
We have a funny one down at Ocean Ave on the West Shore. Jim's familiar with Ocean Ave, I'm sure, but people put up a sign in that there's a 50-foot wide paved area that goes to the beach, and they put up a sign, private, no entry. And you know what? It's not private, no entry, because if you look, scroll down, David, if you look at Ocean Ave and Grant Street, they are both public access ways.
Yeah. Yeah, just
So,
because you
it,
put up
so,
a
so, and
sign
it's
doesn't
like,
mean anything.
it's almost like, the sandwich sign that they put up there. And it's kind of funny. I've never actually gone and taken it down, but I kind of thought about it.
Yeah, might not be a bad idea.
But okay, so David, if you would again go through each of the new graphics. I mean, does anybody feel that there's I mean, obviously information is accurate. Is the graphic consistent with what we want to show in the POCD?
Yeah, this is an updated version of what we previously had. One of the things that I'm going to just test right now, because I mean this is new and in draft. I'm going to inquire of our GIS people as to whether or not this can be magnified, because it would be very helpful on this to have a magnified version where you can actually see up close where the access way is, the individual homes that it goes between, which this map doesn't.
So you mean a connection to Google Earth or something?
Yeah, something like that. That way people can actually see where the connections are. So I'm gonna make an inquiry about that.
So a link from, say, Bittersweet Ave to then
Right.
Bittersweet Ave on Google Earth.
Either that, or yeah, I mean that would be not. I mean for an online document.
Pretty simple, I would bet.
Yeah, and we might be able to turn this into a separate online document, separate from the plan, just as a reference that would be
Okay.
able to do that, which I think would be really, really cool.
Mhm.
And I just noticed we're not showing the Great River because it's way up, but that's one of our famous public access ways where we actually had signage, and
Yeah,
everyone up there took the signs
it
down.
was a condition of the cluster.
Yes.
And I think there's 7 square feet, so it's an awesome place to go hang out.
Yeah. Okay, so let me go to the next one. Give me 2 seconds here. This is our natural diversity database, which I will scroll up, which will be helpful. Would it be? Okay. This identifies areas that the state recognizes as being environmentally sensitive, either because of the species of animals or plants that are found there. It's often used, in when a CAM application is being developed, sometimes a subdivision application, and this comes basically directly from the state. So this is their updated version.
Now, is this graphically more appealing and more user friendly than the previous, or is it pretty much cut and paste?
I believe this one was a cut and paste,
Okay,
because they define, the data on it doesn't come from us, it comes from them. So it's their base map.
oh, this is a graphic that comes directly from the state.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, all right, fine. I mean, if anyone has a question anytime, please just speak up whenever you have a thought.
Okay. And this one. Okay, so this is an updated, I just want to see, yeah, this is the updated open space map. Let me make it a little smaller here. Okay, so this identifies the open spaces that we have in town and splits them up by the type of open space. So we have land trust parcels, we have deeded open spaces, we have town-owned property, we have federal property, we have state property. We have land that's zoned as open space, because not every piece of open space is zoned that way. And then there's land that the assessor assesses as open space. And some of them could be multiple categories, but this gives you a very good idea of where these open spaces are.
So correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Charles Island is state?
Yeah.
I thought that was, excuse me. I always thought that was game and wildlife.
State of Connecticut property.
Okay, and this is a map that is current from the state?
No, this is something that we put together, that our GIS people put together based on data from multiple sources. I think a lot of the data came from, we have an open space coordinator, and they, that was previously Steve Johnson's position. Now it's Jeremy Grant. So they did a lot of research on the open spaces. And I want to say that there was Steve Johnson made a presentation to this committee. Wow, I'm going to say 2 years ago, maybe. And some of the background data for that was an actual database of all the properties.
Okay,
So that's where some of it comes from, that, and some of it comes from the city assessor. Because he has
okay,
to,
and so this is vetted and true.
yes,
Okay,
yes.
anybody have questions or comments before we move to the next one?
Okay. And the next one is our historic districts. And I believe, I just want to see something with the colors. Yeah. So we have the historic districts, we have the historical resources inventory, and then brown ones are buildings. So we have, based on I believe the historic resource inventory, you have dotted throughout town. You have buildings that are part of that, the historic resource inventory. You have the actual historic districts here. Let me zoom in a little bit. This is, historic district number 1, which, is, basically from, City Hall as point of reference here, and, the green, the upper part of the green. And then you have historic district number 2, which is, south of the green. At the moment. And, as we've discussed in the past, and as the historic preservation people have talked about, there's talk of perhaps creating another one that at some point, and if they do that, the planning and zoning board would, be involved in that process, and then we would be able to map it and accept it and all that kind of fun stuff. But
Yeah.
This is what we have at the moment.
Yeah, unfortunately, it seems to me to be diffuse, and it would be nice to have an umbrella that encompassed everything. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we did have, again, it was a different iteration of this committee, and we had invited, numerous people from various committees that are
Yeah.
involved in historic districts and inventories and specific buildings. And it's just, I don't know that the POCD is going to lend any intelligence to it. I mean, we could maybe have a mission statement to try to combine efforts and data and try to get everything under one umbrella, but I don't know if that's even possible, because there's different criteria for different
Exactly.
things.
Exactly. So, the buildings that are, I believe, on this listed in green, are things that are on, there's a resource inventory book that was put together by the state. So anything that has is a historic resource. So it could be the style of the building, the age of the building is listed as a resource. But they stand alone on their own, throughout the city. And then,
there's really no restrictions. I mean, if you go down Governor's Avenue, if somebody wants to change Clapper to
right.
shingles, there's actually no,
Yeah.
there's no
Right.
impact.
Yeah, unless you're on the corners, because if you're on the corners, then you're within the actual.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you're in the district, then there's the historical society.
Right. So yeah. So again, this is probably a better representation of the historic resources that we have compared to the old plan. So
So this is a better overlay, in your opinion?
Yeah.
Okay,
I would just say, if I may, as a
Yeah,
comment,
please.
as an aspirational document, if we could just make mention of our support of historical preservation, maybe we could put in some language there in support of keeping the historical nature of the city, just like aspirational, like I said.
Good idea.
I'm not sure what else we can do. I owned a house in a historical district in Ansonia, and I know um, it can be good and bad, but I'm definitely in favor of keeping the historical aspects of our city
No, I
alive.
think that's a good point. I mean, I think that's foundational for, at least most of the city, right? I mean, there's a lot of people that don't live in the older sections, but it is the charm. It is, it is the history. So I agree. I
Okay,
think,
good. Yeah.
th- I think there's nothing wrong with
Yeah, my
like,
thought is if we
like a
could
statement,
support it.
that's just like, exactly. I forget how you said it, but I like the way you said it. Just sort of a,
Aspirational statement.
yes,
There you go.
aspirational.
Yes,
I aspire to such language.
Okay, can I kind of bring up something about that? Because you bring up a
Sure.
good point. I was under the impression in the historic area, even so it's a historic area, if I have a house there and I wanted to do something, they could slow it down. But as long as I'm following the zoning, they really can't stop me. Is that true? I mean,
Now you have to be careful when you say historic area. That's where people can get a bit confused, because you have the actual historic districts, which are outlined by these black lines.
yeah.
And these black lines here, they have, if you're going to make changes to your structure, they have to be done in accordance with whatever the standards are for that historic district and the historic district commission for that district. So the standards for District 1 are different than the standards for District 2. And before we would issue, say, a zoning permit for work to be done, we would be getting a statement from the historic commission. They're approving it. So, they're going to change the windows in the house. Normally if you walk in, you want permit for your windows or, your siding or your roof. I mean, we would just give that to you. But in the historic district, we have to get a certificate of appropriateness, it's called, from them. So the applicant themselves would have to go to the district, get that certificate of appropriateness, and then hand it to us, send it to us so we can give them their permit. That's in these historic districts here. Now you also have an area that's the West River Historic District, which is an area that's not part. It's in some parts that run through the district, but other parts it's a state recognized area. Has no rules. It's just it's a designation. It's a designated historic area.
Okay. Maybe that's what I was thinking, because I had heard that there had been a couple of projects where the historic district tried to stop it. They definitely postponed it. They had to jump through hoops, but in the end, they knew that they were going to be able to do what they wanted. I guess maybe that wasn't in the specific historic district. Is that?
Yeah, and again, and I'm not an expert on what the rules are for each of the black outline districts here, but whatever their rules are, it's possible that someone applied for something, it met the rules as they were written for the district, but maybe other people didn't agree with those rules. I mean, it's like anytime you have any sort of rules and you have to go to a hearing, you could have different interpretations.
I mean, I think there's also an issue that the historic district may not have actually rule of law. So
Right.
They have, historical precedent that it's adhered to, but it may not be that if you go to court to say, I want blue shingles instead of black clapboard, you don't win in court, but
Well,
it is,
and again, that depends on how their rules are written.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know every town is different. I made mention a couple houses in Ansonia that were in the historical district. I had to go before the board when I wanted to put a roof on to make sure it was the correct color. And when I put a fence up, they had to approve the design of the fence, and it was like that. Um,
Right.
and in that town, it's the exterior. Interior, you can do anything, but the
Right.
exterior, you had to go before the board and it
Yeah,
had to
that kind
adhere
of
to the
makes sense,
rules.
right? It's what people see when they drive by.
Right.
Okay. If there's no more, I don't think there's much that we should weigh in on this. It is what it is, and I think that the graphics are better, so it identifies the various properties as well as we're going to get it, and it's kind of out of our purview in a sense. We're not going to make a difference. So, if without objection, we'll move on.
okay, this is our land use by type. Assessor's land use codes merged by type, okay. So the assessor,
A new graphic, I'm sorry, is this a new graphic?
this
A new graphic or the old graphic?
This is an updated graphic. Then there's going to be one following it that takes this graphic, because this is from the assessor's database and how the assessor does it. And we then try to combine a lot of these uses into fewer categories, because this is sort of granular on the end of the assessor.
Okay,
So, I mean, he's hotels, motels, banks, business office, commercial, which, when I look at some of these things, I would call them commercial. But anyway, this is how the assessor, when he looks at land, views the different types of land use.
okay.
And
And it makes a difference because they're taxed at different rates for him, so.
exactly. Versus, and let me get to the other one. The name on this is misleading. I gotta change the name because it's not a zone merge, but what this is zoning types, and it's basically taking all of those categories that the assessor had and our regulations, and bringing them down into fewer categories. They're not perfect, but they get, I think, from as a planning tool, they give us a little better sense of what's going on.
Okay, so this is more relevant to the public.
Yeah, because it's much
Now, if you
easier.
have a specific interest
Right,
in a particular property, you can look at the other one to know how you're gonna be taxed, but
right. But in terms of general land use, as we would sort of view it through planning and zoning, it's much more digestible and I think understandable.
and is this a new graphic or is this,
I believe this may be it's a new graphic because it's got fewer categories than I think what we even had previously.
but it's basically the same look in terms of
Yes.
detail and, okay.
Yes,
All right, I kind of want to move fairly quickly through this. I just want to show everybody this new stuff and then get into the meat and potatoes of the meeting, which is primarily housing and,
yeah. And this is the updated listing of the types of land uses that we have in terms of number of parcels, the number of acres, and the percentage of the land use area of the city. And I believe this is updated.
yeah, this, I don't know, this looked like it was a 212.
Did it say 212? Yeah, what I'm curious about is, there should be, this should be 100% here, and I don't see that, so I'll have to double check
There
that.
should be a date too. I think
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
I'm not sure this has been updated yet.
Yeah, so I will double check that. And if you have, I don't know if you're hearing all the sirens outside, apparently there's a fire around the corner. So,
Get the hose out.
yeah, as I just glanced down at my phone, there's like 20 text messages from neighbors about a fire around the corner, so. If my house fills up with smoke, I'll let you know.
Hope everybody's okay.
Yeah, well, guess we'll find out. Okay, so that's, those are the graphics that we have for now that have been updated.
Great.
So
Thank you, David.
you're welcome. So let me just back up over here. So if you want to talk about the housing, you know, we're starting work on the housing section. And let me share that. Oops. So we're updating the housing section. I had also sent you, I think this afternoon, the, oops, take it over here. Here. Again, we're in the process of updating the data on this, and one of the things I sent you this afternoon was one of the census quick sheets, because one of the interesting things that's happening is the 2010 census, which is the data we used in the last plan, you know, has our population at 52,759, and the latest census sheet actually has a decline in our population to 50,541. The thing that's very interesting as a planner is that we're still working on collecting the data about how many new housing units we've had over the last 10 years. I mean, we've had a lot of new housing units added to the city and a lot of new apartments. So we have the housing stock has gotten greater, yet the population has declined. And I think that sort of indicates a shift in, you know, I'm going to guess the type of households that are going on. I think we're having.
Well, yeah, obviously fewer people per household.
Exactly. And they're either spreading out. Oh yeah, that's got to be the case. Or yeah, I mean the households are smaller. So now
yeah, combination of empty nesters and new families.
Yeah, yeah. And with the decline in population, you know, and with the increase in housing stock, that's also telling me that people are also going elsewhere. You know, we're losing people who probably can't afford to stay here anymore, or are young. You know, as those households get smaller, the kids grow up, and you know, they can't afford to stay here in town.
But the housing units that we have are full, so there's
exactly, and we're building more units.
4-bedroom house with 2 people in it. And there used to be 4 in it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Joe, you have to unmute yourself, Joe. Still can't.
Or they can afford to leave.
Or they can afford to leave. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Boy,
The south
an
of
interesting figure. Oh boy.
Yeah.
the south of you know, the Italian Riviera is always a choice if you have the money.
Yeah.
If not, there's Milford. So
Right. So where was I? So again, we're in the process of, you know, updating the data. Obviously, we have the yellow markings to get the get all of that information.
Well, outside of the data, let's look at the higher level look at affordability.
Yeah.
Right, that seems to be the hot button.
Yep.
So do we have any data on how that connects with
I mean, not yet. I mean, we can get a hold of, obviously we know that housing, the average price of housing has gone up, and that, you know, that kind of data we can get out of the census. We know what the average rents are. Again, we can get that from a combination of, I think, the census and, you know, from local developers. And, you know, the sort of common issue that places are finding is, you know, if there is not enough, you know, if the demand outstrips the supply, you know, that affects the affordability. So, you know, we clearly, you know, if all of those numbers are going up, you know, the rents are going up, the value of the property is going up, the being able to buy in to to own your own home is going up. What are the alternatives? What could this board do in terms of regulation if it so chooses to provide other either housing types or other kinds of housing stock through regulation to create more housing?
Yeah, so that's where the rubber meets the road here, is
Right,
that
right.
we do have, obviously a number of things, whether it's accessory dwelling units, or how we deal with 830G, or how we deal with merger, right? We have a lot of stuff that's sort of heading towards each other in a
Right.
in a potential crash. But for this committee, I think that what we are tasked with is to have some vision, right? And to say, how do we want to not just, identify the data and put down, true figures, but to put a directive into the document that defines our mission, like a mission statement for housing, for affordability. And, it's not all about affordability, it's all about quality of life, and whether it's a mix of, high-end housing with affordability, and, different sizes, different types. I mean, this is our opportunity. And again, however effective the document becomes in terms of directing the next 10 years, this is our one chance to create a mission statement for housing. So that's really the meat and potatoes, I think, that we're looking for. And it's our opportunity to give a vision, to collect a vision that we have together. So I would love to, and it just doesn't have to be every word and every thought comes out today, but I think this is one of the more important aspects of what we're trying to do, is to create a roadmap for the future with, some obviously data, but some vision.
Yeah, and I'm going to incorporate some language in here that we can get out of the housing plan that the city adopted, because that document didn't exist when
Yeah.
last plan.
I mean, not for nothing, we approved it and all, but it's,
Right.
I don't think it was that deepest dive on what it was supposed to do. Anyway, I mean, whatever, I didn't get to participate in that, but and they did a good job, whatever, but I don't know that it went far enough. So maybe if you could share that with us once more time, so it's easy access for us to look at it.
Sure.
I mean, there was good stuff there, but I just don't know that it was. I just think we're in a position now where we need to be decisive, and we need to be, forward thinking, and I'm not sure that met it, but I don't want to disparage it, but I think this is an opportunity for us to give it some more thought. And I don't know that we have to come off the cuff and shoot from the hip tonight, but, and I don't mind if the rest of this time is spent discussing it or kicking around ideas, and then having the next meeting. I think this is one of the more important things that we can actually affect.
Yeah,
in the
I agree with you, Jim. I think the more data we have, I think the better decisions we could make. But I think this is where people are looking for, for direction, and where maybe we can supply that direction, or at least what we think.
Yeah, I mean, it's a vision, and then if it then kicks down the next level to the regulation subcommittee that has some, when they come up with different things coming down the road, that you can always underpin a particular zone change or a particular regulation change, and you underpin it by, well, the POCD that was approved said this, and the other thing. And so we're now supporting that, and that becomes foundational in the argument to make a change. So I think this is important stuff here. I think that we have very diverse community, right? So it's socioeconomically very diverse, right? So there's there's it's a middle-class community, but there's some wealth and I think that, yeah, we have to sort of vision it for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, between 830G and accessory dwelling units, I think those are the two hot button issues of the time right now for the city. So I
Is
think
it
we
as
could do-
easy as just a mission statement here, or do we need to identify some, paths to achieve specific goals?
Well, that's a good question. You know,
Yeah, Jimmy, speak up whenever you want, Jim.
No, I agree with your mission statement. The only thing is, and I think you're kind of alluded to it, is I don't really know where that goes because this document is really just a guide. And to be honest, I don't really know who even looks at this. It's almost like you come up with an idea, present it to the subcommittees, and almost have to get them to vote on it to say, this is what we're putting in here, and this is going to be your guide for the regs you're going to put in. Because there's really nothing to tie this to future regs just because, I'm an environmentalist. I'm doing all environmental things. Half of those guys may not even care at all what I think the city should go. So it's almost like we need to get people on board before we put it into this document, or the document might end up just being a wasted effort,
You know what, and that's a good point, Jim. And I think that's the quagmire that the last POCD, which was pretty darn good, and what we're doing here, which we've stepped forward on a bunch of things and we're doing a good job, and we have for a couple of years, is that how relevant is the document? And it's as relevant as it's allowed to be. And so that's the political will. I have only a handful of times heard an applicant come in front of the whole board and say, and by the way, this is consistent with your POCD. Now, it has come up, but not that often. And does it really underpin their argument? Well, it kind of does. And I think we hear it. I think one of the things that we have in front of us as a potential asset is that this is the first time a new POCD has the capacity to communicate with the public through social media and bring more people into it. There's pretty lot of activity and people showing up at meetings, and there's groups that are interested in specific things like the housing specifically. But if we do a good job of what we're going to talk about next, whether it's tonight or another night, but is how to do outreach. And if in fact we can do that well, we can hopefully make the POCD more relevant. It is, however, has limited relevance. It is a document that is has no real bite unless the future our board and future boards give it weight. And so that could be, I think, maybe something that we do as a mission statement at the beginning of the entire document when we finally publish it, is that it would be our desire to make it more relevant. And
so that would be my question: is as a P&Z board, can we give it more relevance? Can we put it out more in front? I mean, we want to encourage economic development. We don't want to discourage developers, but we want them to follow our vision of the city at the same time.
yeah, I mean, I think that and David will weigh in, I hope, and say, how much weight can we put into it? If somehow in the mission statement, we attempt to enable the planning and zoning board to refer to it more often and to, lean on it more heavily. It's really, the thing is, the individual boards and the individual decisions are pretty much a vote. So if we have a collective mindset and change the culture to have this board and future boards to be more aware of the specifics of the POCD and to value it more, then on any given vote, any given representative can can weigh in on it and make their argument that this is important because it's underpinned by the POCD. So it's never really,
Jim,
it's never really
Jim,
happened before, but as an
Jim.
individual person, you could say it out loud and try to get votes, you know?
Hey, Jim,
Yeah,
we've
Joe.
we've had that power all along to refer to the POCD at our meetings.
And we've
I
never
don't,
done.
yeah, and it's never been referred to, I think, by any board member. I think I heard it once referred to by an attorney. One of the attorneys, I can't remember if it was Crusading or Nuff, who referred to the POCD, and that was it.
Yeah,
I
and they'll
know.
do that when it's in their favor, but maybe we should make.
Well,
that
I know that, John,
part of
but the
process.
board has never referred to it either, and we can refer to it anytime we want.
Actually, I've heard John actually refer to it. John has said this
Yeah.
isn't in line with the POCD, but it bears no weight. That's my concern, is that this document really doesn't bear any weight. So
Well,
what
the
we
thing is-
refer to it.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, Jim. But the thing is, if we change the culture, right, there's been, 30 years of culture since there has been POCDs, or 40, whatever it is, and no one's put weight to it. But the individual boards, if we change the culture of the board and make it part of onboarding for new members, make it part of our discussion as a collective, that we want to give it more weight, then any individual can bring it up. And if they make a convincing argument and convince people to vote a certain way, I mean, we have a lot of discretion.
That's a
There's
good
certain
point.
things that we don't have discretion, but right now we have never done it as a board and made it important. But I think that's one of the things that we've discussed for the last 2 years is how do we make this more relevant?
I can tell you.
Go ahead.
The answer is horribly simple, at the same time politically complicated, and that is, this is your guidance document. The teeth of this document are found in your zoning regulations. So you can take any concept that you have in this document, any goal or aspiration you have in this document, and you can turn that into a regulation that someone can then do something with. But the board would have to obviously want to do that. So
Mhm.
we can talk about affordable housing. We can talk about all of the housing formats. You can talk about property such. You can talk about anything you want and put that in this document. You then have to just follow it up with a zoning regulation for you to actually do it, for someone to
Well,
actually.
so that's a good point. That's a good point. So then again, if this then becomes foundational and we underpin a future board from saying, okay, we want to change something, and they say, well, why do you want to change it? Well, the POCD says this is our direction, and it should be our direction, and I concur, I agree. And so let's get a subcommittee together to propose a regulation change to accommodate the goals of the POCD. I think that is obviously the mechanism, but I think also the culture change to make it a more relevant document inside the 10-member board would be an effort to start, because it's a cultural change. It's never really been part of my onboarding in 10 or 12 years or whatever I've been on. And so this is something that we're discussing now, and I've felt it for a few years now, that the angst is that it has less teeth than we want it to. So I think step one is to get it culturally relevant in the culture, and then also understand that when it becomes a viable and some kind of a consensus to move something to a regulation change, that we just do it.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the Standing Regulation Subcommittee is a good thing. And we are backlogged a little bit, but we can still, everything does take time.
Well, the answer to all this is in your board's name. You're working on the planning document that guides the development of the city, and then you have to implement it using your zoning hat.
Yeah. So again, when we have a mission statement, or we have mini mission statements per segment or category, that we can put that in, is that we can put that in is that, and we encourage development of regulations to accommodate this. And so that as a planning only, and visioning only document, that we try to make it relevant through the language that we include.
Can I jump in there?
Yes.
I like your idea, but I think it's a little more complicated in that I really don't see what I have to say in putting this together is going to be held accountable to other people. It's almost like we put together what we think is the best. And then the other subcommittees have to vote on it before it's released to say, yeah, I agree with this, or I don't like this, we got to tweak this. Because again, I'm an environmentalist. I'm going to push environmental ideas, but who's going to say that somebody else is going to say, yeah, now we need to do this and that because Jim deemed that was a good idea. It's almost like we need to come up with a mission, maybe, before it's released, have it read by subcommittee or the whole board or alderman or whoever does the zone of regulations. They got to buy into it. Why are they going to listen to what I have to say? Because I put in a document, some nicey thing to do, they're going to follow it. It has to be, they have to agree to it.
Well, so yeah, so to address that, and I agree with you that, you know, it's only going to have the teeth that it does have. But so the concept that we're kind of thinking about now is, you know, we'll meet a couple more times. And then, you know, we obviously have a consultant that we've paid money to do a lot of updates and edits. And by the time mid-January comes around, we'll have a draft that we look at and we kind of review as a committee. And that draft will now, again, when we go to the next segment, either tonight or next meeting, we'll talk about how the social media and how the outreach goes, but we'll have a draft that we will reach out to, you know, all the stakeholders and say, you know, come to the website, Milford website, and look at the draft POCD. And we'll have a couple of, we'll have input from different groups and we'll have some public input. So in the next, you know, 4 or 5 months, we'll get a lot of input and we'll know at the end of the day, Jim, that we're not going to be changing everything. We're going to be given guidelines and a direction. We're going to say, this is our vision. This is our direction that we would like to go. And however we can make that relevant to the board, this board and future boards is up to us. And part of that is the new reality is that there is social media and there is more potential input. And there is, you know, an ongoing subcommittee for regs so that we can pick these things. We're not going to do 15 reg changes because of this, but we can give direction for future boards to say, well, hey, you know what, we've been onboarded to look at this and make sure that we're trying to, you know, as far as we agree, to move some of these things forward, and they'll move it forward. So the thing is, this document has really not been relevant in my experience in 10, 12 years because it was not really addressed very often. But if we make it part of onboarding and we make it part of, you know, the monthly conversation at our meetings, that we keep making it relevant, then that's a culture change. And then the specific changes by, you know, one-offs of regulation changes are done by this committee and then the whole board. But if we make it relevant just through keeping it relevant, then I think we're a little bit further down the road.
I think you're right, Jim. I think it's up to us, really, in the end, as a board, to put it front and center.
Yeah, and you know, and you know, last group that did this 10 years ago put a huge effort in, and you know, we had a different committee a couple of years ago, and they put a ton of work in. So there's a lot of people who put a lot of their hearts and souls into this over the last 20 years, and you know, to make it irrelevant is and it has been pretty much irrelevant, except for, as Joe said, you know, one time. I think I maybe heard it twice. So. You know, so it hasn't been relevant, but I think if we make it, if we change the culture and make it more relevant because we can bring it up every meeting or every other meeting, whatever, and we can try to, try to make this last 6 months productive in community outreach and community input in some public meetings, that it becomes relevant to the community as well. So that's, I think that's our marching orders, is to make it relevant to the community, make it relevant to the board, and then make it relevant to future board members and regulation subcommittees.
So can I share my 2 cents?
Sure.
So the few times that you've heard it referred to at our planning board meetings is usually in reference to a regulation change or some sort of development that may involve a regulation change. So they often will turn to this as a guidance document because they're looking for a regulation change. And again, this is a guidance document, and you can, the best way to make this more relevant and to use it in your daily planning board lives is actually through your regulations, because you're using it. It actually is a relevant document because your zoning regulations are carrying out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But so to my point, David, is that in my first 8 years, no one has ever said, hey, let's change the regulation, this XYZ, because the POCD says we should be looking at this.
Yes.
So
I agree.
that's
I agree with you. I agree with
yeah,
you.
so that's what I'm talking about in terms of a culture change.
Yep. Yep.
So that's primary, is the culture change, which starts with a great outreach program for this POCD change, and make it relevant to the community and make it relevant to the board, and to keep it relevant to the board, whether it's, we have a standing, I don't know. I mean, you guys, everybody collectively think it up. How do we bring it up every month, every other meeting or something?
I think one simple way would be, as the chair, you should get everybody a copy and say, everybody needs to read this document, be aware of this. This is what we use for guidance, and keep that in mind. And then bring it up whenever you want. But they should, everybody, be honest with, I never even heard of the thing until you asked me to be on this board. I'm like, what is it? I had never even seen it, heard it, or reference, or anybody reference it. I think everybody on the board, the first thing somebody comes in the door, they get voted in, you give them, say, read this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that that there's a lot of effort that has been put into onboarding in the past, but I think maybe this is one that could use a little more effort. And I agree with you 100%. And I think that I think we should definitely pay attention to that. And even if people have been on for a while, let's bring it up again and re-onboard. Well, I mean, I think we have the opportunity now, right? Because it's the POCDs in the middle of, it's sort of at the end of the road. So we'll make this, this will be more apparent and relevant to the sitting members as it was to somebody 5, 6, 8 years ago, when this wasn't, it's every 10 years. So there's been 10 years where it was not really addressed often or ever. But so, yeah, I think that this is part of our strategy going forward, is to make it relevant. I mean, that was what, 2 years ago, we talked about this, and it was like, why isn't this more relevant? Well, it's like, well, I don't know, but it hasn't been yet. So let's try to make it. And I think that's our responsibility now to in this exercise, is to and make sure that we make it relevant now, and try to include language in the final document that keeps it relevant.
Absolutely. And you mentioned social media, Jim, a few times. And if we get it out there to the public, where the public is aware of it, that would make a difference as well, I think.
I think you're exactly right. And I think we'll have public outreach. We'll have also public input meetings. And again, it's fairly short time. We have supposedly we were supposed to be done in the end of the year, but because of COVID, we got another 6 months, and so we'll look back at if it's May 15th or May 30th, where we have to have a final agreed upon document to circulate, but I think at one point we'll have by the 15th of January, we'll have some kind of a draft to share with the public and start creating a public outreach. And again, we'll try to give people, after this meeting, we'll pick a meeting schedule and we'll get people stuff like in the next couple days for the next meeting. So we have time to, dig into this or that and, look into issues, a couple weeks in advance before we meet again. But so we are just after an hour. So David, if we could get the agenda up again and begin to wrap this up, we'll get together with a schedule with everybody. We won't get anything else besides the meeting schedule. So is anybody okay with doing 2 meetings a month, or you?
Yeah,
Yes.
actually, 2 would be good because when summer comes, I'm going to be pretty busy. So the quicker we get this done, the better. I really, summertime's a real busy time for me to be on the road. So,
John, are you okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
Joe?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay, let's, what do you think, Meg and David, what do you think works for 2 meetings a month?
So I look at what I'm hearing is 4 meetings a month because I have three other meetings. So let me see here.
No.
And I have
Oh,
4.
I think 6 meetings a month. We're gonna have another subcommittee, David, for you.
Yeah. So we're going into December. Well, I mean, you can have as many meetings as you want. I mean, I'm not gonna have that, that draft again till, January. So you can have, meetings that involve, if there's things that you want a blue sky, or offer input, but I don't know what I'm gonna have to present to you as like an action item or something to comment on.
Well, what did we miss tonight?
Okay, well. Let's take a
Scroll
look.
up.
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
would. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, what's that? Yeah, we talked about, we're gonna have public engagement, once we have this.
Yeah, but we didn't dive into that. I think basically I think if we get a meeting, another, the next meeting, we can pretty much talk about the ins and outs of how to do it. I mean, the thing is, I don't think we have anybody to hand this off to say, oh, online web presence. I think we have to sort of direct it. And
Right.
we didn't get to that. We were just sort of getting divisioning.
Right, we
So
do
if we
have,
that on the next meeting. Housing, we really did not delve into in terms of any specific direction. So, I mean, if anybody wants to add anything to this, and I'm sorry, I may have just yapped on too long myself personally, but if we put this same agenda for the next meeting and everybody collectively picks the next meeting, then we can try to discuss how and what our ideas are on how to proceed with online and the presence. I mean, Jim, I know you have, a lot of experience in social media. I'm not sure who else does, but on how to do outreach. I mean, I don't think we have anybody in-house that we can just hand it to. I think we have to come up with some of our own ideas.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I mean, the closest thing we have in-house is, we do have the city webpage. And and there's, if you go to the Planning and Zoning Board and you go under the POCD 2032, there's a page that we're putting resources on, information as we gather it gets deposited there. And that would probably be the location for when we have the actual draft document that we would, refer people to go and,
Yeah, exactly that. But I mean, I think the outreach
is different. Yeah. And
We
we
don't
can't,
do
we can't do that through our webpage. I mean,
No,
it's.
no, we can direct people to it and.
Exactly.
And if we can get, everybody to think about, we have all these things running around our heads about what's in front of us in terms of housing. But if we start trying to come up with, a mission statement or some specific, direction to put in so that either this present board or a new board will have, a foundation for new regs to help direct some affordability into housing. Then I think that, I think we kind of just sort of got back together this time. But if we can just do this again for next meeting and you guys just tell me when, and I'm in.
Okay.
So John, Jim, Joe, what's a good date for the next meeting? A week or two hence?
I'm available, every week. So whatever works for the majority of you guys.
Do
Every
we have
Tuesday,
a,
every Wednesday?
David, do we have a regulation subcommittee meeting on schedule?
We have to schedule it, but yeah, I mean, I believe the schedule would have been, for that meeting to be the 14th. I think that's when we discussed.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the next one of these would be the 28th, but I mean, I suppose we could make it the 21st. You got Christmas at the end of the week, but it's on the weekend, so either the 21st or 28th, could work.
Yeah, I would think probably 21st would be better than 28th or.
Okay, and that would be the day after the planning board meeting, because we would have a planning board meeting on the 20th.
Right. Does that work for everybody?
Works for me.
I don't know. I know I can't make it on the 14th. I don't know about the 21st. I mean, December's a very busy month for me. But let me look, okay, at my diary.
Yeah.
I have a conflict, but Sue could probably do it.
Think
Yeah.
I'm good.
We'd have to ask her.
When you say, which date do you have a conflict with?
The 21st, I have a commitment.
Okay. I mean, if we were keeping to the schedule that we were trying to establish, I mean, the meeting night would be the 28th, but I mean, that's.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that are like Christmas too.
Not to
New
rush it.
Year's, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Joe, what do you do? Joe's looking at his calendar.
okay,
I have to go get it. I mean,
I'm good for
What?
either 21st or 28th, so
Yeah.
whatever you guys
I
think
am
is-
available the 28th, so.
Yeah, I mean, I could make either as well. So.
Yeah, I'm okay either way too. I mean, the great thing about it is it's remote.
Yeah.
yeah, I just can't make the 14th, but I can make probably the 21st or the 28th. Yeah.
so what's the consensus?
21st.
I would say 21st, and if we can get a replacement for Meg.
Well, we'll never get a replacement for Meg, but we can
Well, I
get someone
know
to take
that.
her place.
Unless we do the 28th when she's available.
Well,
Are you folks available? I mean, are each of you available or on the 28th or?
Yeah, I am. Yeah. Yeah,
I do
28th would
Sounds
be,
like it.
28th
said-
would be better for me. Yeah.
28th is better for you?
What
Yeah.
day is that on? Is that a Wednesday as well?
It's a
That's a
Wednesday
Wednesday.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine by me then.
So the 28th?
28th.
Okay,
Well, thanks, everybody, and
Oh, don't
again,
forget the
we have-
minutes.
well,
You have to,
minutes.
from
do
last
have-
time.
we do have all the information that Dave sent, so if we review that again and again, please Any questions or thoughts before the meeting? If you have time to look at stuff and have questions, please feed it to David and copy me. And that way we can have anything prepared for the next meeting that you'd like to have.
So right now, just because might as well tackle the agenda right now. It sounds like we're gonna have a housing item and a public engagement item.
Yes,
Okay,
All right.
exactly right. Unless somebody else has another thought that they want to add. Okay, so approval of minutes.
I move to approve.
Jim
I
second.
second. I second.
Anybody opposed? Seeing none. I thank you all very much for your time tonight.
All right, take care, everybody.
thank you.
See ya. Have a good night.
Have a good night,
Good night,
everyone.
folks.